First of all, thank you for joining our training today on OSINT Uncovered, Enhancing Investigations with the ObSINT Guidelines. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all today and to welcome our trainer, Alexandre Alaphilippe. As you will have read in the description of the training, in 2022, a group of OSINT specialists from a range of organizations recognizing the evolving OSINT landscape and the need for common standards united and released last year the first draft guidelines for public interest OSINT investigations, which is what we will be talking about today. And our presenter has been integral to the project since its inception. For those of you who don't know Alexandre Alaphilippe is the Executive Director and co-founder of EU DisinfoLab. Since 2017, he has coordinated work on some of the organization's largest investigations into information operations linked to Russia, India, and China. In 2022, he led the exposure of Doppelganger, which has been labeled as one of the largest information operations from Russia in the past years. He's a member of a number of working groups in Brussels and Washington, D.C., linked to platform regulation, transatlantic relations, and hybrid threats. And Alexandre is also part of the consortium board of EDMO BLUX.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Paula, and all the EDMO team for the invitation and for the organization. And warm thoughts to my co-presenter, Kalina Boncheva, who was supposed to be with us today and could not make it. And we wish her the best to recover. So this webinar is this training, is titled OSINT Uncovered, Enhancing Investigations with the ObSINT Guidelines. So you will hear this catchword a lot, ObSINT, which is a trademark, some kind of a collective that has been formed by a few organizations that I will come after about who these organizations are, but OSINT Curious, EU DisinfoLab, the Center for Information Resilience, Check First, DFLab, Logically, and OpenFacto, which are all organizations coming from different parts of Europe and have not the same kind of background or structure, which was a key for us into integrating this kind of diversity into the work of the guidelines. The first question you might ask yourself is, what are these guidelines? And I'm going to launch a very short disclaimer at this stage. It's like, you're not going to learn today about OSINT skills or how to do specific type of investigations. This is not the purpose of these guidelines. The purpose of the guidelines I will present today is really to look into how an organization can integrate the best practices available from other organizations into their own working, their own methodologies. So this is not about how to do GeoINT, HumINT, social network analysis, or all that kind of cyber OSINT skills today. It's really about looking at what are the best practices to make sure that the OSINT work that you do is at the upper level possible to be able to connect with other organizations and to have good quality OSINT being delivered to the public. So OSINT comes from a perspective. You have here two famous, I would say, cases of how OSINT has been able to put facts on disinformation. The first one is the MH17 shooting over Ukraine, which has been debunked famously by Elliot Higgins and his team at Bellingcat. And I think that for many of the people countering disinformation, this has been an eye-opening of how you can use available information to actually pinpoint responsibilities on specific actors, on facts, and to expose the disinformation done by the Russian state on that part. This has been also eye-opening for many media organizations, NGOs working on this field, because until that time, open source intelligence was mainly conducted by the intelligence services to actually complete the kind of intelligence they receive from other sources. But with the development of the internet, with the development of social media, much more information has been made available online by social platforms and by users themselves on the internet, which has completely unleashed the possibility for OSINT to actually get into more accountability and more information about what was happening online. The second picture you can see here is also how this has been very much integrated in many newsrooms, where you had in 2022 the second invasion of Ukraine by Russian regime and the massacre of Bucha, which thanks to information made available by satellite companies such as Maxar, have been able to actually show how the different corps and different civil exaction have been led into Bucha by the Russian army, and to show the potential for a war crime on these things, and to provide potential evidence into international judicial proceedings on that part. So we do see from that part a very interesting path from something that is really, I would say, disruptive in the media ecosystem in 2014, 2015, to something that is completely integrated into workings of media companies in 2022. But at the same time, we also see a different parallel, which is what has been happening also in 2023 with, I would say, the combination of the kind of work that is attracting OSINT is what has been happening with the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war in October, November 2023, and to combine this with the new attention market that has been developed also by the takeover of Twitter by Mr. Musk. Why is it so? Because by favoring and by paying actually users based on their audience figures, we have seen much of this so-called verified account or Twitter Blue or X Blue subscribers that are actually paying to have more visibility and more credibility into the platforms, but delivering sometimes very low quality OSINT. So this is actually looking into how this attention market has been on the edge of actually falling apart because of non-qualified OSINT people were able to have great audiences by having wrong analysis or biased analysis or truncated analysis being published and provided to the public eye. So we do see that from that part, we went from something very niche where only a few experts were able to do a few years ago, to something that basically everybody thinks they can do. And that's why we've been trying to think in the scope of this project to have some kind of a common vision of what could be relevant guidelines to actually detect and to improve and enhance the quality of work by OSINT practitioners online. So why creating OSINT guidelines? 4 main reasons: no existing standard, no existing standard, no existing standard, and no existing standard. So the issue we've been confronted to as a group of practitioners is like the scope of OSINT work. It was very wide, and it was very complex to actually standardize this work into looking into what is good quality OSINT and trying to define only like a list of criteria of, say, like how your study should be done, because the community is so diverse, the techniques are so diverse and evolving, that it was a bit of a dead end to try to find a standard that would be able to apply to everybody. So instead of going that way, we try to take a different approach into this. And by doing this, we started by acknowledging our own limits. So looking at ourselves as a group of practitioners and looking at what we do. First, 7 organizations cannot represent the entire OSINT community nor the entire industry. So the fact that we were people doing OSINT to counter disinformation mostly also shows that people that are doing OSINT to do investigations on art smuggling, on sanction infringement for instance, consumer goods in Xinjiang, for people that are doing drug investigations, might not be the best one that we have. So we've been trying to acknowledge this as a limitation from our own work at the beginning. The second part of it is like the guidelines we've developed do not cover all types of OSINT investigations, and we focused on a specific aspect, which is the public interest. When you actually doing OSINT that you plan to release to the public, because when you plan to release to the public, this information can be quoted, referenced, and be used by other people down the line. And this is why the work that you should put is actually crucial to be accurate, diverse, and of excellent quality, because if so, it helps everybody to be better at it. To do this, so as I said, we had two solutions. One was the stick, so trying to hit people that were not doing OSINT the right way. The other part was to actually go with the handrail method, which was to work on overarching principles, and then from these principles to be able to show that what was the main ways to go forward, and to leave the freedom, to leave the capacity of initiatives to organizations to adapt the guidelines to their own working, and to make sure they can find the right documents based on their size, based on their capacity, based on their financial support, and to be able to apply to these guidelines without having some kind of a mandatory, I would say, list of things and list of documents they could do. Of course, the more they can do, the better, but we do not think that at this stage there is a sufficient mature community to be able to implement all of this, especially from the ground, especially if, as we have seen in many collective of OSINT, many OSINT collectives or OSINT journalists are often alone or with very little support and with very little capacity to implement all of these documents from scratch from day one. So the guidelines have been developed done in 5 main chapters. Before I'm going to this, I'm just going to explain a bit what are the partners and the context. This has been done in the context of a European project called the European Standard for Fact Checkers Network, the ESCF-CEN. And part of this project was due to have a common code of conduct for both fact checkers and OSINT organizations. Unfortunately, looking into discussions, we realized it was not possible to have the same kind, for the reasons I explained, of standardization of processes both for fact checkers and OSINT, also because the work was very diverse. And in the sideline of the EFCSN project, we actually developed these groups of practitioners, which I said come from very different origins. So I come from EU DisinfoLab, which is a non-for-profit based in Brussels, who has been doing OSINT, but mainly after self-training and I would say not having a very large background into OSINT work before launching ourselves into this. OSINT Curious, which is now a different collective of OSINT researchers being based both in US and in Europe. The Center for Information Resilience, based in the UK, who has been crucial into monitoring the war in Ukraine and documenting this with many information. And you may have seen some of their work with Bellingcat and other collectives. Check First, which is a Finnish company that is doing many data analysis. And that was interesting for us to also have private companies into this. That's why we also had Logically, with also a company doing analysis of narratives of disinformation and sometimes investigations. DisinfoLab, which is very known for training a community of future OSINT practitioners. That was also very important for us to be able to have the capacity to train people over these guidelines and to train the next generation of OSINT practitioners with these guidelines. And thanks to DisinfoLab, this has been made possible. And Open Facto, which is a French association of OSINT practitioners. And that was also crucial to have the support of people structured already as a community in one member state to have their vision about how this could be done. So as I mentioned, 5 main chapters. The first one was principles. So these are core cross-cutting principles that end up in the OSINT process. And you will see that you will find these processes, these 5 values, I would say, 5 principles feeding all part of the other chapters, but these are really things that were very close to I would say, the sense of the work that we've been doing. First one was accuracy, so the capacity to be accurate in the OSINT process that you do, but also in the methodologies that you describe, and accuracy will come back at a later stage on this. Community, the sense that in open source intelligence, you have open source, and this means that it's something that is shared. You share your methodology, you share your findings, sometimes you share your data, and that was very important to keep this community aspect very strongly. Diversity. OSINT is good when it relies on multiple diversity of methodologies, of profiles, of people from different origins that can, I would say, enhance the findings, enhance the way of searching information. I'm always sharing this anecdote that inside the EU DisinfoLab, we have people that are sometimes investigating the same case, but by doing two different ways, because we are two different people, we find the same findings, but going very different ways. So this is a proof that this kind of diversity helps to forge better accuracy on the long term. Accountability, it's about accountability of the findings that you do, how these findings can be used for further accountability. So being able to provide data and findings that are up to, I would say, have consequences, whether it's on reporting or on other long-term accountability for the actors that have been exposed into the report. And then balance and responsibility, always balancing between OSINT, which is basically, if you're looking at open source data, could be basically everything, but also you have a responsibility to have between what you try to achieve and the methodologies that you want to use. And this question of balance will also be very much important into this. So 5 main principles, I would say, that are overarching the 4 other chapters of the guidelines. So the second part was the question of the public interest. So as I mentioned earlier, the guidelines have been developed mostly with a focus on OSINT for the public interest. Why is public interest important? Because it's what is defining private investigations that are done for the sake of an organization itself to what the public eye is facing. It is important because when you're going in front of the public eye, you need to be able to defend what you have found. You need to be able to defend how you found it, and you need to be able to defend when people will attack your findings. We do see that in the counter disinformation community, attacks against NGOs, against media, against journalists are unfortunately getting more and more regular, where you have to spend quite a full amount of time justifying everything that you do. At DisinfoLab, we have been a subject of a slap for the past 3 years on our OSINT findings, and we have to justify and spend time, and I can assure you that is time that we would rather spend on anything else, justifying all of our OSINT findings, justifying in front of a judge, in front of lawyers, finding the right words, etc. So this is why it is utmost important to have this kind of public interest view into how you do your OSINT. What does it mean? It means that you can have a few documents that you can prepare internally when you develop your investigations on analyzing and providing an analysis on how much what you're going to work on is for the public interest. So how this is going to be facing the public eye, what are the strengths of your investigation, the weaknesses, what are the opportunities and threats, so basically a SWOT analysis for the public interest. You can have a risk assessment saying like, if I'm going that way on the public interest, what will I face as an individual, as an organization, as risks for publishing this investigation, and how do I prepare myself? And I can also prepare a public interest statement. Something that we've been doing, for instance, in some of our investigations, especially on very tensed contextual situations, such as the relationship between India and Pakistan, was to put public interest disclaimers saying that pre-bunking somehow some of the attacks that we will receive, because of course, if you get after one country, the others will of course use this for their own propaganda. So trying to have this kind of I would say public interest statement in mind can help you to say, when you publish along with your publication, say like, this is what we do, and this is not because we are saying that country A is doing bad, that country B that will attack country A is doing very well. It has nothing to do with this. It has to do with what we have found and on the scope of the investigation we have launched on this. So keeping this in mind, that this kind of public interest statement and public interest thing is quite crucial, especially at the stage when we do see that many X accounts are sometimes publishing live findings of OSINT, which could be very damaging because you have very little knowledge about how something can evolve and can be something very partial. So always be careful before going to the public interest that there are risks, and it's better to include them in your overall methodology and practices before going to this. This is done for some of the organizations of ObSINT. This is done for every investigation. Most of the things that we're going to talk are done sometimes as an overall policy, and sometimes as a policy for every investigation published. And that can define a bit what is the outcome of a publication. The chapter 3 was looking at the methodology. Very often we've seen in the past low quality OSINT work that was flowed with methodology biased or methodology lacked. And we divided methodology in 3 main points. One is design, one is data collection and preservation, and one is data analysis. On the first one, on the research design, is really to design the research that you have into an ongoing process. So basically, your research does not start when you have your first idea of research, and then you look at it after it's been published. So basically, it's refined from the beginning of your research and through the whole point, because when you're doing your OSINT data collection or OSINT research, at some point you might realize that you have some data gaps. You might realize that some of the tools are not providing you enough accuracy. You might realize that you actually miss a data point or something that will help you to go there. So the research design process is for you to have the documents or to have the tools to be able to regularly assess that, compared to what you want to do for the public interest, that what you have actually done and what you actually found and what you actually want to do next is completely in line with this, and you have enough information about what are the potential flaws and what are the potential shortcomings that you have in your methodology process to be able to go through. So it is really something that should be taken over all along the process and all along the conduction of the research for this. Second part is the data collection and preservation. Access to data and data collection is a strong issue regarding OSINT. I know that we have with us Paolo Cesarini, who has worked a lot on this with his different hats in the past on providing access to data to civil society organizations and to trusted vetted researchers and trusted flaggers. The question of having access to data is crucial. The question of what data you can use is crucial, and how you balance the public interest purpose of your research and the right to privacy. This is one of the key elements of the GDPR. The question to balance and to be able to show that the public interest is stronger than the right to privacy. But to be able to do this, you need to have a permanent thinking about, why do I need to mention this Twitter account? Why do I need to mention this person? Why do I need to mention all of this? Is it relevant to what I want to uncover at the end? Is it relevant for the public to know this? Is it relevant for the community to know this, to be able to have replicability of the research? These are overarching questions that should come on a regular basis during your research. So the second part of it is, of course, the preservation of the data and how you can keep archive of this data. And we also know that there are many issues around archiving data or platforms not providing enough archive of the data that have been taken down. This is also a crucial element to have long-term accountability, because if all data is removed from a platform at some point, there is no traces left of what you have found. There is no traces left of who has done what. So we need, in your OSINT methodology, you need to have a process to make sure that you have a right preservation of the data you provided and rightly referenced. The other part of it is the data analysis. So the data analysis should be objective, accurate, and allow for replicability, which means that in the way you're using your data analysis, the way you're using algorithms, tools, AI-supported tools, you need to have what needs to be there to be able to assess the flows, assess the risks, and make sure that your data analysis is correct, it's accurate, and allow other people with the same data that you have to find the same results. This will talk mostly to academics that have been applying these methods for a very long time, but like for people doing OSINT, this is somehow a game changer, because they were relying on small data points that were not always allowing for replicability, and sometimes I would not say accuracy, but like acknowledgement of the issues of some of the tools that you can use could be. So example of good practices. So if we're looking at the design process, so of course you can have internally a research plan, which details like all the research that you want to conduct. You could also have like some kind of research skills. What are the skills that you have in your organization or in your collective to be able to know what you can do and where you have some gaps into your skills compared to what you want to deliver for the public interest. And also a data limitation assessment. If I want to achieve to that exposure of the public eye, what is the data I might miss and how I can get it, or how I can work without it, and maybe revise then my public interest assessment because I don't have enough data access. So again, this is really like a complex system methodology, these guidelines, where you have feedback that help you to go back to every step at the same time. So it's not a fully thorough process. Regarding data collection and preservation, have a data protection policy, how you protect data from the data that you collected. How you have a data protection impact assessment. What is the impact if you lose some of the data, or you're getting hacked to some of the research data that you have? So trying to have that kind of information. Kind of fundamental IT security policy, making sure like who has access to the data that you are collecting and how. Data pseudonymization policy, do you need one, and how to implement it? And also long-term archiving tools. Regarding the last part, the data analysis, we could look at research logs. So basically documenting all research actions being taken on a specific thing. We could look also at confidence levels, where I'm doing an analysis with a certain AI supported tool. But like, I don't know, Botometer, for instance, which is helping me to define if a Twitter account is a bot or not. Do I have full confidence of the findings? Not full confidence. Maybe I have a rate, and that helps me to have some kind of better information about how the tool I'm using is accurate or not. A peer review could happen. We'll come back to this into the application of the guidelines. and a technical stack. So basically looking at all technical stack that you're using in terms of data collection, data analysis, to also trying to find the flows in what you can have into that part. The fourth chapter of the guidelines is around outputs. We mentioned the community, so this is quite crucial. So this was the first subchapter of outputs. So one was the support of the community. Open source intelligence is fed by the work that the community is ready to share publicly, and is also fed by the tools that the community is making available for everybody else. So that was one of the crucial output for us, is as much as possible, explain, show what you have done, how you have done it, share your methodologies, because it will help other people to actually reproduce it at a bigger stage, at a wider range, and to be able to have more OSINT to be done and more accountability to be done. This is something that you should keep for yourself, and most of these techniques should be explained publicly, into the whole output, or in an annex or an appendix. But it is important to share this. OSINT should remain open source. It should remain open. It should remain as free as possible, so more people could do it, and we have a better civil society resilience into this. And the second part was to have accessible outputs, being able to have papers, deliverables that are clear, that show the methodology, that have no flaws into how the data is represented, and to work thoroughly on the design of your outputs to make sure they can be accessible by a largest crowd. The other part of the output is also the follow-up. So especially if you work on this information, it's hard to think that that the exposure of what you have found will stop at the day of your publication. There might be follow-ups. There might be things that could maybe contradict some of your findings at some point, or that provide additional information to your findings. So it is also important to keep some kind of track of looking at how your case has been evolving, and to be able to continue the dissemination, and to probably maybe update or provide some kind of information that might be helpful to better understand in the future what other people have been doing on your case. In terms of good practices here for the outputs, we could have public interest assessments of publication and privacy reviews. So looking into how you have done your public interest assessment. Provide supporting evidence for your finding. To have considered your target audience. If you target the public eye, it's not the same if you target, I don't know, the main TV channel. If you are like a OSINT journalist in the main TV channel for 2 minutes of live OSINT on TV, or if you are writing a more complex investigation of technical cyber, that might not be the same evidence and the same audience, and you might not need the same kind of accessibility of level of details. Include in your study methodological annexures. Include disclaimers where you think you have flaws, when you think you can, some other might provide better information, or you are not sure, or you think that this would require additional work to prove a certain point. Write it down. And also have your own editorial guidelines, so you know exactly also from the public, people know what they should expect from you, and how you decide on your editorial choices. Regarding the support of the community, we can, of course, talk about facilitating access to knowledge, which is knowledge to do this kind of OSINT work, make available expertise, contribute. I would like to insist on that. Many of us, including myself, are using a lot of OSINT available tools for free, and we sometimes are frustrated when a tool doesn't work. and we sometimes don't take the time to actually inform that the tool is not working, and we try to find another way. But it's important to contribute back to say when one tool is not working, to say to the creator on GitHub to try to find a solution instead of just like using it and trying to find the best one afterwards. People are spending quite some time to make this tool for free, and we should give them back some time into providing feedback and making sure the tool keep on working and could be improved. That's an important part of also keeping this open source. And participate and or provide trainings on your methodologies, on your practices, to make sure people can also be better collectively. Regarding point 5, general work practices. So in that part, we looked at not only how you're doing OSINT, your research, etc., but also having an environment that allows you to work properly on this. So first one, and I would like really to insist on that, is to have a diverse, safe, and caring work environment. If you're working on OSINT, especially on war crimes, you might be subject to very violent images. And this is not this is a responsibility to acknowledge working on these topics, because the damage these imagery can do to people is quite enormous. I know for a fact that many journalists that have been working on the Bucha case or on ISIS disinformation and war crimes have been very violently traumatized by being able to prove where these killings did happen, how, and the victims. But still, don't launch yourself into this if you are not prepared and if you have not the right environment around you. This is important because we do see more and more people jumping into OSINT because it's a cool thing, but this is not a game, and this can have real life consequences. So best effort should be made to protect the staff well-being and people involved in research and dissemination. So any kind of policies to protect the staff when confronted to violent images are really crucial. Any kind of psychological support available for teams is hugely crucial. So again, really insisting on that to have a right environment to do this, to be able to share also when you don't feel well with colleagues or with the right support is really important. I could not insist anymore on that. Second part is the accountability part. Is like you, if you produce this kind of public AI, you are also responsible for the research methodologies you used, for the data you hold, and for the public outputs you disseminate. So this is not about publishing for the glory. It's really about making sure that what you have is of the utmost quality, and to be able to defend it, and to be able to face the work that you've been doing and show that you have been able to do the best work possible. In terms of good practices here, we could have a few things regarding the diverse, safe, and caring work environment. Diversify tools and techniques to be able to find ways without being confronted to stuff. Also highlighting this, that having a diversity in your teams is also very important. I remember that at some point, most of OSINT done in Russia was done by non-Russian speakers, which is problematic because you need to have people that can be able to enter this space, to have the contextual information about this. So really diversity is crucial to be able to navigate this space. These also go into your recruitment and working practices. Make sure you have enough time off and prevention. Cybersecurity and online safety training. Let's not forget that when you are doing OSINT, sometimes you are at the risk of exposing yourself So it's also important to make sure that the staff is trained to protect themselves, that they are not exposed in their personal data, family, etc. Prevention and mitigation of risks for staff. So I have also like a mitigation program in case of something happens, employee assistance program. Cultivate feedback, knowledge, and experience sharing internally. That's also very important to make sure that everything is working well and you are not working in silos. Whistleblowing policy, in case organization is not taking enough to protect staff and to be able to blow the whistle to alert on specific issues. Regarding accountability, accessibility and responsiveness, if people ask questions about your findings, you need to be sure that people can ask yourself questions and you can respond to them. Acknowledgement, as we said, acknowledgement of mistakes is important. Corrections policy, if you have made a mistake, don't hide it. Put it on your study, explain where you have been doing wrong, why, and how you will do better next time. This is very important to have some kind of accountability. Self-assessment, yeah, looking into what you can do, and overall general transparency about who you are and how you are organized. So in the second part of the thing, which will be shorter, I will explain how some of the organizations from the ObSINT consortium have tried to develop their own way. So as I was mentioning before, the whole point of these guidelines is not to say you've seen like in the good practices some kind of like a 35 different title of documents and saying like show me all your documents for all your investigation. That's not the case. The case is this is what we think based on what we have seen, what we've experienced, where we failed, where we succeed, what could be good things to go ahead. And based on that, we've been trying to work on specific chapters of these guidelines and to say, okay, how would this document look like? How would be a good way to formulate this into something that could be useful for the community? So for instance, at DisinfoLab, when we talk about the research plan, so I was mentioning the research plan, which was writing some kind of a plan of what we want to do, what are the questions we're asking ourselves. So we have developed a research pitch framework, which is basically looking into every time we do an investigation to have some kind of a document that is filled in by the researcher in charge of the research and shared internally with a peer review of 2 colleagues that can evaluate if the research pitch is actually answering all the questions that we need to ask ourselves. This has been helpful because it allows to clarify what is the topic, the subject of the research. It's also something that we can share with other organizations in case of a partnership or a shared organization. And it's a backbone document for the researcher. So it's basically look like at the content, so what we plan to do, the structure, the methodologies, the impact, the risk assessment, if we use specific data. So this, for instance, is a research pitch that has been done by it's a fake one. Huh? Don't try to find actually the right investigation for it. But it basically looking into content, structure, methods, impact, what kind of data will you use, what kind of risks there are with the data that you use, what are the time and resources that you plan to do on your what is the estimated timeline, what is the target, what is the outreach. And based on this, we have an evaluation of this document by 2 peers within the organization that can say, okay, maybe here we need more, we might need a bit more time because that might be a bit time consuming. Here, it might be interesting to use this tool because it provides good feedback on that kind of analysis. So it's really a thing that is helping us to have what the research is looking like at, and when we have deliverables, when we are doing the research, to be able to always come back to this to see if we are in line with that initial pitch. So really, it's an effort at the beginning of a research, of an investigation, to make sure that what we do see is really looking into and ticking all the boxes of where we want to go. If you are interested in looking at the framework, the document is available, and I can let you flash the QR code if you want to. I guess the slides will be made available, Lisa. So
yes, absolutely.
So you will be also able to access this. Another part that has been done was an operation assessment framework. So basically, when we look at the outputs, CheckFirst has developed. So they've been working on an investigation called, at that time, what's called the Facebook hustles. And they looked at, was their publication able to meet first the public interest assessment, and was solid enough in terms of privacy reviews. So they developed a document, which is an Excel, a Google spreadsheet, that is a ticking box for many, for 18 measurement points. Basically, as data, as personal data being anonymized, do you see any public interest, star. And this is a yes or no tick box. This is done by 2 internal reviewers inside CheckFirst and by 2 external reviewers outside CheckFirst. The external reviewers are paid for the verification. So they read the study and they tick the box. And to be able to publish, CheckFirst has established a minimum score that they need to get from the internal external reviewers to be able to have a green light. When they have done this with Facebook hustles, and they've integrated the results of their assessment into their study in Annex, they have seen an increase of the transparency of both the methodologies and the assessment of what they have been doing. More journalists were able to contact them and trust their findings, which has led to more audience being reached by this study. So we have seen this has been a virtuous circle. And on top of that, thanks to the external peer review, they've been able to contact all the members of the community that were more familiarized also with the study. And that could also show that they were part of this, which was also had, I would say, some kind of side benefits. Again, if you're interested with the operation assessment framework. And I would like to salute CheckFirst for this, because it's not easy as an organization to put this publicly and to go outside your own organization when you have an investigation that you basically very often don't want anybody to know about it, to be the first to publish. And it's kind of a brave and mature move to this kind of peer review, to have even a better paper being published. I think it's really remarkable. Methodologies, another example, Center for Information Resilience, working on data collection and preservation. So they have launched Eyes on Russia, which is a database of all verified information coming out of Ukraine using open source methods. And what has been remarkable there is, like, when putting this database together, they have been able to write the full methodology of how the data was collected, who was verifying it, what was the whole process of verification, and to really provide to the public a clear, I would say, trace of everything that was published on this database, and to be able to provide avenues for people to send remarks, to send comments, to provide information, because the clear process and the clear methodologies was completely available. And on top of that, for other people that want to use this data for further investigation, they know they can rely on the methodology that has been published. So they know the potential flows, they know how it's been collected, they know what some data might not be there, etc. So it's also a step towards the community to help everybody to know where the data comes from and to be able to reuse it for further investigation. So we are really looking at something which is both explaining what you do and providing trust in what you do, but also providing trust on what people will do with it. So it's really 2 steps of good practices there. So they've been focusing really on the user-generated content collection, UGC collection, data archiving, data hashing, so making it anonymous, verification, categorization, and review. And all of these processes is really described at length into the CIA eyes on methodologies, which has been also very remarkable. So if you're interested also in this, the methodology is available. So now the question might be, what are the next steps for these guidelines? And what we've been looking into now is to be able to, as a project we are part of, has unfortunately ended, we're looking into keeping on developing this work, keeping on developing the consortium and enlarging the consortium to have a better vision of how we can provide more and more of these documents available to all organizations. So basically, one of the points would be the consortium that we have formed to be expanded with other organizations doing OSINT, and being able also for them, whether to have access to more documents that we publish, or also to get in touch with other organizations that can propose their own documents and their own methodologies that we could make available to everybody. So the next steps of ObSINT is really to look into how we can structure a more permanent, I would say, a working group of these practitioners that could also help in the long term to highlight excellent OSINT publication that we see online, especially in terms of crisis, that could help also other organizations to know better about what could they do, and by this kind of virtuous circle to bring the community to a more mature stage within a few years, where it could be able to have much more visibility and much more, I would say, standardized working, and then to be able to have a better, I would say, sustainability also of the community, because the players that are actually implementing these efforts should be rewarded somehow with better credibility and better support, including financial.